So I want to start with a little bit of a thought experiment today.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
Have you ever noticed how the exact same request from a colleague or maybe a partner can either make you totally eager to help or instantly trigger this deep, almost visceral urge to just resist?
Oh, absolutely. It's like a physical reaction.
Right, it's immediate. And today's deep dive is really about the invisible psychology hiding inside our pronouns. We're pulling insights from a really fascinating piece by Mohammed Farouk Rashid. He's a researcher of human psychology and society.
Yeah, his work on this is just incredibly revealing.
It really is. And the mission today is to look at how a very subtle, almost imperceptible shift in our daily speech,
Yeah.
specifically moving from a language of command to a language of partnership, fundamentally rewires human relationships.
It's such a tiny shift, but the ripple effects are massive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And look, if you're listening to this, you are probably already someone who thinks a lot about how to communicate effectively. But the goal here is to give you a shortcut to the underlying mechanics of why certain words build bridges and others build walls.
Without having to sit through a whole semester of linguistics. Right?
Exactly. Without the textbook jargon. We want to get straight to the core of it. Okay, let's unpack this.
So the foundational premise here is that communication is, well, it's never just a functional exchange of data.
Right. It's not just a memo.
Exactly. We often treat talking like handing someone a physical memo,
Right.
just transferring information from point A to point B. But psychologically speaking, our vocabulary choices they're like a live broadcast of our internal state.
A live broadcast. I like that.
Yeah, because our assumptions about power, our emotional condition, our perceived hierarchy, it all bleeds right into our phrasing. And a perfect demonstration of this is the difference between a directive and a collective statement.
Okay, give me an example.
So imagine someone telling you, remember, do this, do it exactly like this.
Right. The objective is totally clear. The task needs to be done a very specific way.
Now contrast that with someone saying, we must remember, we have to do this, we need to do it like this.
It feels completely different even just hearing you say it.
Right. The functional goal hasn't changed at all. The exact same task is required of you.
But the neurological response is night and day.
It is a night and day difference, and the psychological mechanism behind it is rooted in our evolutionary drive for self-respect and autonomy.
Because humans naturally protect their agency.
Fundamentally, we are wired to protect it.
Oh.
When you are approached with commanding language, do this, go there, your brain often interprets that not just as a request,
But as a threat.
yes, a subtle threat to your autonomy. It establishes an immediate dominance hierarchy,
And nobody likes being dominated.
especially from someone we consider a peer. The natural human response to dominance in that context is friction. The amygdala flares up just a bit. We feel an instinctual reluctance or resentment because the commanding tone literally alienates us from the process.
But wait, let me push back on that for just a second.
Sure.
Are there situations where that dominance hierarchy and that command language is actually necessary? I'm thinking of emergency situations or highly structured environments, the military or an emergency room.
Definitely.
Because in those contexts, wouldn't using we language just cause really dangerous confusion?
That is a great distinction to make, yes. In acute crises where immediate, unthinking compliance is literally a matter of life and death, direct commands are essential.
You don't want a surgeon saying, maybe we should clamp this artery.
Exactly. You want clamp that now. But the problem arises because we take that emergency room directness and we apply it to, say, a Tuesday morning marketing meeting.
Or asking someone to empty the dishwasher.
Right. In routine, everyday life, relying on the language of command continuously degrades the relationship. What's fascinating here is that behavioral psychologists universally agree that it's rarely the explosive arguments that destroy trust.
It's the little thing.
It is the daily, microscopic accumulation of this commanding tone. It creates a dynamic where the other person is constantly having to subordinate themselves to your phrasing.
That makes so much sense. It's like the linguistic equivalent of 1,000 paper cuts.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And applying this to the spaces where we spend the bulk of our lives, starting with the home, it completely shifts how we view everyday interactions. Take parenting, for example.
Oh, parenting is the ultimate test lab for this.
Right, because obviously no one thinks being a raging dictator to your kids is a good idea. But even well-meaning parents fall into the trap of endless, low-level commands.
Pick up your shoes.
Finish your math.
Don't leave that there.
Exactly. Just a constant stream of orders.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And according to the source material, the cost of that communication style isn't necessarily immediate rebellion. Often it's superficial compliance.
They do it, but they aren't happy about it.
Right. If a parent is constantly issuing directives, the child might do the task just to avoid conflict, just to get the parent off their back.
But beneath that compliance, something else is happening.
The internal trust and the collaborative bond of the family unit begins to erode. The child stops viewing the parent as a mentor or a partner in life.
And just starts seeing them as a manager.
A manager to be appeased.
So the compliance comes at the cost of connection.
Exactly. But by simply swapping the phrasing to, we need to get the living room cleaned up, or we have to figure out this math homework, the cognitive framing changes entirely.
It stops being a top-down mandate.
Yes, it transforms the child from a subordinate who is being managed into a responsible, empowered stakeholder in the family's success. You are building a shared identity.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we've all experienced that dynamic, and it translates so seamlessly into the educational environment, too.
The classroom is a prime example.
Think about the traditional authoritarian classroom model. The dynamic of a teacher demanding silence and commanding students to, shut up, open their books, and copy notes.
A completely fear-based approach.
Right. And we know that kills any genuine love of learning. But the shift to inclusive language in a classroom does more than just make the teacher seem nicer. It fundamentally alters the cognitive ownership of the material.
It does. A teacher who says, let's unpack this concept, or we need to understand how this formula works, is doing something incredibly strategic.
They're stepping down from the pedestal.
Exactly. They are stepping down from being the sole arbiter of knowledge and becoming a co-explorer.
I love that. A co-explorer.
When a teacher uses let's and we, they transfer a portion of the intellectual burden directly to the students.
So the students aren't just passive receptacles waiting to be filled with instructions anymore.
No, they become active participants in a learning community. The fear of being wrong is replaced by a shared journey of understanding. It leverages our social nature to actually enhance cognition.
It really is astonishing how much psychological weight rests on two of the smallest words in the English language, you and we.
It's all about linguistic positioning. The analysis of that positioning in our source text is incredibly revealing.
Let's talk about the word you for a second, because when it's used in a directive or interrogative way, it acts almost like a linguistic pointed finger.
Yes, it instantly isolates the listener. It creates a sudden, stark boundary between the speaker and the listener.
Like if someone asks, why didn't you finish that report?
Or, you need to fix this error.
Right. In both cases, the entire cognitive and emotional burden is just shoved across the table.
It inherently carries a subtext of accusation, even if the speaker doesn't consciously intend it to sound that way.
It just feels like an attack.
It puts the listener on the defensive immediately, forcing them to justify themselves or protect their ego.
Whereas the word we does the exact opposite.
It erases the boundary.
It signifies a shared burden. If I say, we need to get this report finished, it says that the problem is out there and the two of us are on the same side of the table facing it together.
And this raises a really important question about how we define successful leadership.
Because traditional corporate structures lean so heavily on the you pronoun.
They do. Managers delegate by saying, you do this and you do that. But truly transformative leaders intuitively understand the power of we.
They generate inclusion.
Inclusion and deep intrinsic motivation. They frame challenges collectively. They say, we need to hit this target.
And it's not just a trick, right? It's not just linguistic trickery.
No, it signals a genuine willingness to share the risk and the effort. People will dedicate themselves far more deeply to a leader who is pulling the rope with them than to someone who is simply standing on the sidelines shouting cadence.
That makes total sense. And if we scale that dynamic up, we start to see a profound societal ripple effect. Because a workplace, a household, or an entire culture that operates primarily on the language of command is going to be fundamentally fractured.
It breeds distance.
It breeds distance and bitterness. It creates an atmosphere where everyone is just looking out for themselves and resenting the authority figures above them.
But a culture that defaults to partnership language builds a baseline of trust.
If we connect this to the bigger picture.
The barrier to creating that culture of trust is so often our own ego.
How so?
Well, there is a pervasive illusion of authority that dictates our communication. People naturally use their age, their job title, or their social standing as a built-in license to bypass the effort of partnership language.
They think they don't have to try.
Right. The internal logic is, I am the boss, or I am older, therefore I have the right to issue commands without factoring in the other person's psychological response.
It's basically the ultimate lazy communication hack, using your rank to avoid having to actually build consensus.
Exactly. But true wisdom, true leadership, involves communicating in a way that never intentionally diminishes the other person, regardless of your actual structural authority.
And our deep dive material uses a really fascinating historical anchor to illustrate this point, looking at the communication style of Prophet Muhammad.
Yes, the historical example Rashid uses to anchor this concept is quite striking. He points out that despite holding absolute spiritual and societal authority in his context, his approach was overwhelmingly rooted in consultation.
So instead of just dictating terms.
Right. Rather than leveraging his unquestionable rank to demand immediate compliance, he frequently used inclusive dialogue, making his followers feel valued and heard.
That is a huge analytical takeaway.
It's powerful. If a historical figure with that level of ultimate authority prioritized partnership over dictatorship, it completely dismantles the excuse of the modern mid-level manager.
Or the stressed out parent.
Exactly. The person who claims, I'm in charge, so I get to just give orders. True authority doesn't need to assert dominance to be effective.
That completely flips the script on what power actually sounds like. Power isn't barking orders. Power is having the security to invite collaboration.
Security is the key word there.
And honestly, looking at the state of the world today, adapting this inclusive communication style feels less like a soft skill and more like a survival mechanism.
It really is.
We are operating in an era of unprecedented cognitive overload.
The modern context amplifies everything we've just discussed. We are constantly connected, constantly bombarded with information, and dealing with ambient stress levels that are historically abnormal.
Everyone is stressed out all the time.
And when an individual's baseline stress is already elevated, their bandwidth for dealing with friction is severely diminished. Their tolerance for being commanded or feeling patronized is practically zero.
So people are just walking around with their defenses already half raised.
Exactly. In this hyper-stressed environment, gentle, dignified communication is absolutely critical. It acts as a de-escalator.
Can you give me an example of how that plays out day to day?
Consider an everyday domestic conflict that perfectly illustrates this. Imagine a scenario where a shared responsibility, like a household chore or a collaborative work task, has been neglected.
Oh, the classic kitchen counter scenario.
Right. The instinctive reaction, driven by our own stress, is to ask, why didn't you do this?
Because we want an answer.
But as we've established, that instantly registers as an accusation. The other person's threat response system kicks in.
So they don't hear a request for information.
No, they hear an attack on their competence or their character.
The defenses go up.
The excuses come out. And suddenly, you are no longer trying to solve the problem of the uncompleted task. You are now engaged in an ego preservation battle.
Which is exhausting.
Very. But you can take that exact same frustration, the exact same unmet goal, and pivot the language. Instead of, why didn't you do this? You say, we really need to get this finished. Can we tackle it together?
It's a brilliant pivot.
Because it instantly neutralizes the threat.
You aren't ignoring the problem. The chore still needs to get done.
Right.
But you are placing the problem in front of both of you, rather than letting it sit between you like a wall.
You are affirming the value of the relationship in the very same breath that you are addressing the issue. It builds a bridge.
It acknowledges the shared reality.
Yes. Acknowledging the incomplete task while simultaneously reinforcing that you are a team. This simple shift prevents a minor logistical failure from mutating into an emotional conflict.
It preserves the structural integrity of the relationship.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this, navigating your own life right now?
It's really a call to audit your linguistic habits.
Think about the emails you drafted today. Think about the conversations you had over breakfast or in your last team meeting.
Are your pronouns subtly pushing people away?
Isolating them with, you need to do this, and why haven't you done that?
Or are you drawing them in?
Are you giving orders, or are you inviting people to be co-travelers in whatever challenge you are facing?
Synthesizing the core of this entire concept, it comes down to a fundamental swap. Recognizing when you do needs to be permanently retired and replaced with, we will do.
Because human society, at every scale,
from a two-person marriage to a multinational corporation.
It isn't held together by contracts or a physical infrastructure.
No, it is constructed entirely from words and the attitudes those words convey. Your communication style isn't just an accessory to your relationship.
It's not just a tool you pull out when you need a favor.
Right. The way you communicate is the absolute foundation of the relationship itself. The style truly is the substance.
The style is the substance. If your communication style is demanding and isolating, your relationships will inevitably become brittle.
They will break under stress.
But if your style is inclusive and collaborative, your relationships build a resilience that can withstand immense pressure.
It requires intentionality, especially when we are stressed out, but the return on investment is just profound.
Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today.
It's been a great discussion.
But before you take out your earbuds or switch over to your next task, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, leave them with something good.
We've spent this entire time exploring how swapping you for we can repair and elevate your external world, your family, your colleagues, your community.
Right.
But think about your internal monologue. When you make a mistake, when you miss a deadline or fail at a personal goal, does your inner voice sound like a dictator, aggressively saying, "Why did you mess this up again?"
Wow, that's a powerful shift.
What would happen if you applied that exact same partnership language to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
How might your resilience change if, in the face of failure, your internal voice simply said, "Okay, we need to figure out how to overcome this"?
Treating yourself as a partner instead of a subordinate.
Exactly. Think about it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive, for bringing your sharp mind to the table, and for exploring these invisible forces with us. Until next time, take care of yourselves and pay attention to the pronouns you choose.